This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge. This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.
And let's see, there we go. Now I'm on. Okay, so she's capable of such great things. Her TED Talk talked about something that scared me when I sat down and said, okay, let me see if I can do this. Let me see. And it was the idea of connecting with ourselves and having a conversation with ourselves. So this is hard to do. I hope to get her back on it sometime so we can talk about it and she can pull apart her TED Talk. Now, this is the first discussion that I had scheduled with several people to come attend. Okay, and for her to have this miscommunication on my part and not get us talking and speaking and carrying on, it made it very difficult. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to self-interview. Yeah, how boring is that? I'm going to ask myself some of the questions because here's why I'm doing this. When she said you have to have a conversation with yourself, she has a statement in her work where she says it needs to be one on one. Humans need to be working with humans. I found that to be just so powerful, but she goes a step further. Humans have to work with humans. It has to be human to human, and that means you to you. She had a couple of questions that she came up with. She said this takes place. She had a question that hit her at 4 o'clock in the morning. A question that hit her that she did not want to answer. And I've been associated with the Willpower team, and they started asking questions about what's your legacy going to be. So let's share that. For those of you who are on live and have the ability to do this, let's talk about our number one question that I always ask our guests. What is unique, powerful, and a need to know about your TEDx or your company? What's unique and powerful about your TEDx or your company? If you take a look at my first TEDx, that was unique and different only because I challenged the norm of how we think about goal setting. I believe that when you set smart goals, you're setting dumb goals. Yes, I do believe that. And I do know that at every business school in the nation, they're telling you to set smart goals, specific, measurable, reachable, attainable, and time. Okay, I don't think that works. I think when you set goals like that, you're playing it safe. So that's what was unique about my TED Talk. I went against the norm. And now, 5 years later, people are starting to say, yeah, smart goals are safe. I believe I was a trendsetter in that. I believe I was the first one to actually write a book that was nominated for a Pulitzer for that. I believe I was the first one to get on a TEDx stage and say, hey, if you're setting smart goals, you're playing it safe, and it's a dumb way to go about it. What's also unique about my company is we're not about the fluff. Okay, we want to talk about the difficult things. We want to give you skills and techniques. That's what we want to power through with skills and techniques. What is it about your company that's unique and powerful? What is it about your company that's unique and powerful that most other companies don't even think about? Well, George comes in his comments and he says, what's unique and powerful about our company is that we work one-on-one. We don't use automation. Now, I have to admit, automation makes life easier. If you're not using automation, that's kind of tough. But that's what his statement was. We don't use automation. We work one-on-one. We sit down and we write our letters. We sit down and we contact people. We don't use automation. We barely use LinkedIn. That's a very powerful way. Oh, Sally, I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to pronounce everybody's last name, but Sally is saying what's unique about her company? Uh-oh. She said they work with customers one-on-one. They don't try to mass produce anything. They customize their programs. Okay. Those are two very powerful statements. Okay. I'm asking the rest of you to think about it, even if you don't want to put it up in the chat room right now. What is it that's unique and powerful and a need to know about your company? So if you're going to go speak in front of a Fortune 100 company and you're going to tell them what's unique and powerful about your summit, about your company, about your event, what would it be? The most important conversation you're going to have is going to be with yourself. And so you can be prepared for this statement. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get in front of people and give the statement. I'm just saying if you know the statement and you feel the statement and it's your mission, it comes through in your presentation. By the way, just a quick question for you. If you're making a sales presentation, how long should it be? How long should it be? I just finished reading a book that talked about your sales presentation. If it's more than 3 minutes, no matter what price point you're at, if it's more than 3 minutes, it's too long. Interesting. Okay, so this is why you're not going to tell people what's unique and powerful. You're going to demonstrate it in your 3-minute presentation. How many of you have actually done TED Talks? Okay, so the next question we usually ask our guests is, well, the journey to a TED Talk. What was that like? Well, mine was pretty straightforward. I decided what I wanted to talk about, and I sent in applications. I filled out the forms. I sent them in. I probably only did about 150 applications before I started getting noticed and before I actually got the position to speak. A lot of TEDx speakers need to get used to the idea that there's going to be 300 to 400 people trying to get on that same stage. And you just got to play the numbers game. You got to play the numbers game. There's some of us out there, though, who just were invited to speak. Just invited to speak. Our guest last week, she was invited to speak. And they didn't even tell her what topic they wanted to speak on until a couple of days beforehand. And the truth of the matter is, if you haven't listened to her, you need to go back and listen to that. But the truth of the matter is, it said we need to talk about women topics. And she said, as a woman, I can't talk about that because it's too big. Let's try to narrow it down. So the journey to the TEDx. So, for me, I was on the road teaching and flying, had crisscrossed the country a couple of times that month, and then had to find a way to get from Ohio, the airport in Ohio, I think it was Cincinnati, up to the campus of the university that was putting this event on. Nice, quiet 2-hour drive, got a chance to practice my speech, and I'm the type of person who doesn't get nervous. I very, very rarely get nervous before anything. I got nervous before I got married. I got nervous when I met someone special and couldn't even talk to her. I was so nervous. But everything else, I do not get nervous. And that was a fact. I did not get nervous that day at all. But here's the truth. The moment I finished, the moment I walked off the stage and got to the green room, I was so nervous. I was so sick. My heart was racing. Everything was breathing. All that nervousness that would normally be there at the first showed up at the end. But my journey was kind of unique because that whole day I spent there and I was watching everybody get set up, and I decided to help people get set up. I had a virtual reality room there and decided to learn a little bit about that and hang out there. So the whole day getting ready for this, I didn't really focus on the actual speech. And the audience was great. I didn't really focus on them. I just focused on trying to get my message out. The mistake I made that a lot of people are saying now that you should do, memorize every single word before you go on stage. I didn't do that. So if you listen to TEDx, you'll hear where I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to say next. I didn't memorize every single word. I didn't have it on a teleprompter. But some of the best speeches are memorized before they're given. Okay, 18 minutes. If you have a message, it's an idea worth sharing, and if the most you have is 18 minutes, you need to have that memorized. Okay? And enough about TED Talks, but that was my journey, a little bit about it. Now, let's talk about this idea of connections. Besides yourself, what's the most important connection you've ever had? Besides yourself. Julie says her parents. That's kind of easy, isn't it? That's kind of true. If it wasn't for them, if it wasn't for that connection, you would not be here. I wonder if she's talking about a little deeper, though, how they raised her and the education of her and her creating that life experience that created her personality. I believe that's what she's talking about just a little bit there. Okay. But the connections, I want to ask you some of the most important connections. Oh, so Sam says his most important connection he ever made was with Tony Robbins. Here's a motivational, he says, don't call me your guru, but here's a motivational speaker who has skills to teach that'll help you keep your attitude high. He said that's the most important connection. Sam, tell us a little bit more about why that's the most important connection. Jim here pipes in and says, my most important connection was with myself. Now, that is what Michelle talks about in her TEDx, connecting with self. Okay. What else? Okay, so great. A few in there. We can talk about all those. Okay, great. Sometimes those connections, we didn't initiate them. Sometimes those connections are initiated by the other person. Are you the type of person, like they call my daughter an old soul, because she's the type of person that you just want to talk to and share issues and share challenges with? Okay, and that's her. Sorry about that lighting. And that's her. She wants to share issues and share some of her challenges. People, you just go to her and you just talk. What skill does it take for people to want to come to you and talk and share their life with you, share their information with you, make you a better person because they're willing to share? What skill does it take? Oh, Bill, I think you're 100% right. I think this is what it comes down to. It takes a skill of you having an interest in them. I'm going to say a little bit deeper. You have an interest in them before you have an interest in yourself. I'm going to go one more step. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Now, in some of our 2-minute talks, we talk about that simple one rule that will make you a great leader. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Then people will feel comfortable, trust you, because they know they can be understood by you before you try to get your point across. Okay? You guys, what forces you to talk to yourself and get power within yourself? What's that force? What is that? I mean, is there something that kind of says, okay, I've had enough of this and I need to question it? Well, Michelle shares a story in her TEDx, and I hate that we're missing her because she's a very dynamic speaker. But she shares a story in her TEDx where she talks about that she's driving home, and all of a sudden this question comes up: are you happy? And it was during a time period where she said she should have been extremely happy. She just had hit all the check marks in her checklist. She was hitting them. But so she tried to ignore that question. But it's a small nagging question. What caused that question to come up? What causes the questions you have to come up? Now, for me, sometimes that question comes up because somebody else said they didn't like me, or somebody else gave me a thumbs down on something, and that causes that question to come up. But when I really get truthful, I get the true question comes up based upon what I need to have happen, what my universe needs to take place. And that it's always a kind of a quiet voice. And honestly, I don't think anybody else has ever put that quiet voice in my mind. They may amplify it, but it's there first. And when I get quiet and I listen, that quiet voice gives me the information. That quiet voice gives me the question, gives me the solution. I'm going to suggest that you allow your quiet voice to not only give you the question, but to give the information. And let's be a little radical here. Well, it's not so radical anymore. You need to start meditating. You need to start meditating 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, whatever it takes. But meditation is not always what we make it out to be. Meditation does not always mean being silent and having no thought. That's a great way to meditate. But also a good way to meditate is to walk. Okay? Not strain, not stress, not run. There's people who are in great shape who run, and that's a meditative period. But until you get to that spot where running is not a stress for you, you can run in half an hour and have your mind open and blank. That's what a lot of people do. Meditation comes from when you get a good piece of music on and you listen to music. Meditation happens when the thoughts in your mind quiet down. Now, it is very natural for thoughts in your mind to jump in and out all the time. And when that happens, whether you're trying to be quiet, whether you're on a walk, whether you're on a run, whether you listen to music, that's fine. As soon as you realize it, go back to just listening to the music, or go back to focusing on your breath as you walk or run, or on nature. But once you start to quiet your mind, the questions come to you and the answers come to you. They just flow. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. How do you solve problems for yourself? Most people say, well, I look at the past. I look at what I think the future is going to be. I'm very logical about it. Yes, that logic will help convince you that you're making the right decision based upon what your gut says. If your gut says, which is your solar plexus, if they say yes or no, that's what has to happen. So let me give you a quick exercise that I have found kind of useful. Flip a coin. I always flip a coin and I say yes is heads, no is tails. Yes is heads, no is tails. I flip that coin. So let's say I have a question. Should I go to this restaurant? Should I go to Starbucks? I flip a coin. If it comes up yes, how do I feel about that yes? Is there the least bit of concern? Is there something in my stomach that says, that means I didn't want it, and that means it's the opposite. But if it comes up yes, I'm okay with that yes. I don't have that gut feeling. And that gut feeling is, if that gut feeling is there, is a positive. If I feel any negative to that answer, it's the no. If I flip a coin and it comes up no, and I have any negative feeling to that answer, that means the answer should have been yes. So let's take the Starbucks example. So I have my quarter, I flip it in the air, I catch it, and it comes up yes. I look at it, yes, and I immediately say to myself, no, I don't really want to. That's the gut saying, no, don't do it. Okay. But if I flip that coin and I catch it and it comes up no, and I say, okay, I have a neutral or a good feeling about it, that's the right answer. So it's not the coin telling you the right answer, it's your gut telling you what the right answer is. Now, once you get that, you can automatically justify it with the logic and all that stuff you want to. It's easy to justify it at that point. But let's now move it to the business realm. You have to make a decision based upon whether this is a good route to take, whether you should have, let's put it this way, whether you should have a partner involved. Should you have a partner involved in the business? You have to look at that and have to decide, okay, yes or no. Well, for the summit that we have coming up here shortly, 9 months, I decided to bring a partner on. And I looked at several different people. And each person, once I said their name and saw them and looked at their LinkedIn profile, whatever, each one of those people I looked at, they gave me a response, whether it was negative or positive. So I finally reached out to the one person who was kind of pretty strong positive. Okay, pretty strong positive. This person, I said, I need to go ahead and let her be the CEO of the company. Let her run with the whole program. And even though we've had our differences, and we will continue to have our differences because that's the way it works, because she's not like me. I didn't hire somebody like me. And we're going to have our differences, and we work them out. We will continue to work them out. I will tell you this, before we even get to the point where we're releasing the information publicly, this is going to be one of the best summits ever, only because the partners I've chosen, they're different. But I had a good, positive feeling about them. And it was just simply looking at their names, knowing their work, and deciding what that gut felt like. I'm going to challenge you to think about that. Now I can always automatically, this lady's credentials is beyond belief. They're impeccable. So I can always justify that with the logic. But I know I feel better. Part of the reason why that feels better for me is because it is certainly a non-linear approach. Life doesn't work in linear ways. We wish it did. Then the old Ben Franklin plus and minuses would work just fine. But life does not work in linear ways. Oh, I sure wish Michelle could have been here for today's conversation, because that is so useful when you look at how you're making decisions and discussing with yourself. It's a non-linear movement. Non-linear altogether, okay? I want to ask you something else. So this is the question I was asked our guest. I always ask them, how did this TEDx change your life and or your business? So I'm asking them, how did this TEDx, when you delivered it, how did it change your life or change your business? I'm asking the audience now, have you ever been into an event that changed your life or changed your business? How did it do it? That's a powerful question. How did it do that? Because once you can figure that out, you're more likely to be able to find more events, more things that help you change your life. Okay, here's one. It's a paradigm breaking shift. Oh, okay. I know this to be true. It's a paradigm breaking shift when you're walking on fire barefooted. Now, those of you who have never did the fire walk, by the way, I used to teach people the fire walk, but those of you who never did the fire walk, you're walking about 20 to 30 feet on hot coals that are about 1800 to 2000 degrees in temperature in your bare feet. And you can do it without burning your feet. Okay. And when you do that, it shifts your paradigm. You start to understand what I can and can't do. It's a powerful place to be in. Really powerful. I would highly suggest you consider that. So that's one thing. So that's a good way to look at things. I want to share with you that if you have any thoughts of doing a TEDx talk, or you have done a TEDx talk, I would invite you to come join us. Send me a message on LinkedIn or in the description or in the comments and say, I would like to share my message. What we do is we take apart your TEDx. So we know it cannot be more than 18 minutes, but we take that apart. So the ideal worth sharing, we demonstrate the why to it. We give you a chance to talk about why. I asked you questions. I listened to your TED Talk at least 2 times. In this particular case, I listened to hers 4 times. But I really want to know your TED Talk. So make sure you know your TED Talk. You know, you might have done it 3 or 4 years ago and you kind of forgotten some of the things. I'm not going to forget them. I'm going to ask you something directly from that. I'm going to ask you questions. We're going to pull your TED Talk apart. We're going to dissect it. We're going to make sure we understand why this message is worth sharing. We do it in 3 parts. The first part of the show is about you. What was your journey like? How did you get here? Why did you do it? The main part takes up at least 2/3 of the show, where we pull your TED Talk apart. I ask you questions, you answer questions. The audience chimes in with their questions, you answer those questions. We dive in deep because we want to make sure that everybody walks away understanding the idea worth sharing and they can apply it. The third part is just simply, what are you doing right now? What are you doing right now to help? So those are the 3 parts, and we do those for our TEDx and TED Talk discussions. If you happen to be a subject matter expert in an area, you don't necessarily have to have a TED Talk, but if you're a subject matter expert and you want to share that, as long as we're not talking about a commercial, we're great. We're great. By the way, if you are someone who speaks about inclusion, okay, or speaks about human capital, I want you for that segment, that area of this magazine, and that subject matter experts helping us to become better leaders. Okay. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. And by the way, on the TED Talks, it doesn't matter what your TED Talk is about. Okay, it could be from anything, the refugee crisis, hunger, leadership skills, anything, as long as it comes with passion. All right, so I'm going to end this today. We will continue to do these, and we'll make sure that we have a guest every time from this point on. Well, it doesn't matter. If we don't have a guest, we're going to go ahead and come to it. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get it done. So I want to say thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging out with us today. My name is Glenn Daniels. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Touchstone Publishers, and I'm the founder of our new summit coming up here that we will be discussing here shortly.
Thank you for connecting with us here at Touchstone Publishers. Please join our group Essential Leadership Skills and share your leadership knowledge with us all.